Faith Talk 1500, the Paul Edwards program in the Center for the Study of God and Culture. 866-423-9578 is our phone number to engage. Rob Bell's book, Love Wins, was controversial even before it was released on March the 15th, on Tuesday. As a matter of fact, so controversial that Harper One decided to push up the release date a couple of weeks. It was originally set for release at the end of this month. But the media tour began in earnest last Sunday night in New York City with an interview, a live stage interview that Rob Bell did with Lisa Miller of Newsweek, and then continued with appearances on all of the morning shows, ABC and so forth. But Rob Bell, I don't think, was expecting what he got from his interview on Tuesday with Martin Bashir of MSNBC. After going round and round for about 3 minutes with Rob Bell, about whether or not it was necessary to have a relationship with Jesus Christ in this life, Martin made a comment to Rob Bell that I think perfectly sums up what many of us are feeling about Rob Bell's book and his position on universalism.
You've just indicated, though, one of the problems with this book, which is, in a sense, you're creating a Christian message that's warm, kind, and popular for contemporary culture, but it's frankly, according to this critic, unbiblical and historically unreliable. That's true, isn't it?
No.
What you've done is you're amending the gospel, the Christian message, so that it's palatable to contemporary people who find, for example, the idea of hell and heaven very difficult to stomach. So here comes Rob Bell. He's made a Christian gospel for you, and it's perfectly palatable. It's much easier to swallow. That's what you've done, haven't you?
Martin Bashir is best known for his documentary on Michael Jackson, Living with Michael Jackson. More than 27 million American viewers tuned in back in 2003 to watch that, and he remains the only interviewer to ever conduct an exclusive interview with Princess Diana. And, of course, he followed Ted Koppel at ABC's News Nightline back in October of 2005. He's now the host of the Martin Bashir program on MSNBC weekday afternoons at 3 p.m. And Martin Bashir, it's an honor to welcome you here to the Paul Edwards program.
Great pleasure to be with you, Paul. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Rob didn't seem prepared.
Well, I think one of the problems with the previous interviews that were conducted, and I say this in speculation, I have no evidence for this, but certainly judging by the questions that were asked, I can't believe that the book was read. Because if you read the book, even from a purely historiographical point of view and the treatment of history, it is evasive and frankly disingenuous. When you get to the point of biblical criticism, it gets even worse. So, for example, let me give you an example of something that he does in the book. He takes a question that was asked by Martin Luther in the 1500s when he was asked whether God saves everybody at the end of the day, whether universalism is truly the message of the gospel. And Luther, in the letter responding to that question, has this line: "Who would doubt God's ability to do that?" ? So Rob Bell includes just those words in his book, but he doesn't go on to quote the rest of the letter. And what does the rest of the letter say? Well, I've studied the rest of the letter. I found it. He says this: "No one, however, can prove that God does this. But whether he does give faith or not, it is impossible for anyone to be saved without faith. Otherwise, every sermon would be in vain, false and deceptive, since the entire gospel makes faith necessary." Now, that's a small example of where Rob Bell has taken an historical document, selectively quoted a very small portion of it to prove his view, and actually ignores the rest of the letter. Now, I don't care whether you have no religious faith, that you're a committed Christian or not. That's not historiographical methodology. That's not how you treat history. And that's what he does in the book, repeatedly. And let me give you another example. He goes to Scripture, and he quotes John chapter 3, verse 17, again to argue his point, where Christ says that he did not come to judge the world, but to save the world. Okay? So Rob Bell says, there you are. He's come to do that. He doesn't even read the next verse. What does the next verse say? "Whoever believes in the Son is not condemned, but whoever does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only Son of God." How can you possibly be taken seriously as a biblical critic if you take one verse and build your theology upon it and don't read the immediate verse that follows the one you've quoted. I mean, you tell me, is that really trustworthy academic theological work, or is that basically disingenuous?
In what you've just said, Martin, you have affirmed for me my initial reaction to your interview. After I watched on video the 7-minute interview with Rob Bell, my immediate reaction, my immediate thought was Martin Bashir knows more about historic Christianity than does Rob Bell, and I believe that sincerely. So the question for me and my audience becomes, as I've watched this video go viral, particularly on evangelical blogs, the question that is being asked by many evangelical Christians is Martin Bashir himself an evangelical Christian? What is your own faith story?
Well, let me come to that in a moment, because the critical thing that I think your audience is bothered about, and this is what informs my work, is the idea of truth-telling. And I have to tell you that my own career has been injured a number of times by my desire to get to the truth. I've been the one who's been criticized. You mentioned earlier in your very kind introduction that this story has gone viral, that there's conversation on the blogs. But if you read some of that conversation, about 50% of it attacks me for asking those questions.
Sure.
And here's the point. The essence of the journalistic process is to find and tell the truth. It doesn't matter what one's personal disposition is. That's what your vocation is as a journalist. Now, there are some people, I might be one of them, who would say that our theology actually shapes our understanding of truth-telling, because of all people that should be bothered about the truth, the church and Christians should be at the very center of that discussion. And that's why this book is so deeply disappointing, because it is disingenuous, and it's coming from somebody who is standing publicly expecting people to listen to his view on the most profound questions of life. Now, if I'm examining this guy's book and I find the kind of historical errors that are in it, I find what I feel to be deliberate avoidance of material that doesn't work in his favor, how can I possibly take the view that I'm going to simply accept him and what he says about issues of truth? It's very difficult to do so. So my answer to your question is, in one sense, it's irrelevant. The task of a journalist is vocationally to get to the truth. When I was interacting with Michael Jackson, the world was saying he's the Messiah, he's a genius, he is absolutely super talented. I happen to agree he is musically a genius. Nobody combines his composing skills, his dancing skills, and his vocal skills in one body. Nobody ever did that. But was he the Messiah? Well, let's examine the truth about that. And that's what I did. Now, the consequence of that has been that for a long period, I had to have some additional protection because people wanted to kill me for asking that question. But the driver in this matter is truth-telling. And your audience, okay, your audience is bothered about what the truth says. And I read the book carefully. I then went away. Thankfully, I had a pre-publication copy. I went away to 2 libraries. I contacted 3 academics in the area of ancient history who are respected and well-regarded, 2 of whom have no personal religious faith whatsoever, but are so highly regarded as ancient historians. And I said to them, help me understand this. So here's another example. In the book, Rob Bell quotes an early Christian writer, Origen, who believed in eventual universal salvation for everybody, regardless of how you respond to Christianity in this world and the claims of Christ. But guess what? There's another early Christian writer called Arius, who taught that Christ was not fully God. Now, every church council up until the 19th century has rejected both individuals' theses, both Origen and Arius.
Right.
Guess what Rob Bell does? He goes with Origen, and he doesn't